Hi, it's Professor Hui. Today is day one for which we talk about basics of cloud computing. We're going to look at what is cloud computing and what not is cloud computing. We're going to define the service layers for cloud computing as well as the business model for cloud computing. The basic question that we have to ask is, what is cloud computing? Well, the easy answer is simply you have the combination of the internet with outsourcing of information technology. So internet outsourcing of information technology, providing a mobile and green computing capability to the end user. I think that would be a very simple way to define cloud computing. Now, what exactly is outsourcing? Basically, you want to get rid of your data center for a company and putting all your hardware, in this case here, including the server farms, the switches, the routers, the storage area networks, as well as all your applications into the cloud. So effectively, you don't want to own any hardware, but rather try to obtain these, the use of these hardware, such as servers, in the cloud that is owned by somebody else. So the idea, very central to cloud computing, is really information technology outsourcing that hopefully would much simplify the life of an IT manager within a corporation, also reducing the cost of providing IT for people in the company. A very central part of that, obviously, is the use of the internet as a glue to connect the internal network of a company to the cloud that is outside the company. Now, according to Gartner, I'll just read it here. Virtualization is the highest impact trend in infrastructure and operations through 2012. It will change how you manage, how and what you buy, how you deploy, and how you charge. The idea of cloud computing as an outsourcing of IT services really is rooted in the very fact that it's much cheaper, easier, and probably more robust and reliable to use cloud computing instead of having an internal IT infrastructure. So it really would affect how you manage, how you buy, what you buy, how you buy them, and how you deploy them, how you charge them, and also how you manage the computing resources through the cloud. If we check Wikipedia, there's also an answer that's given here. Basically, you have terminals on the edge of the cloud. Could be mobile devices, or could be personal computers. And then the cloud would be a mixture of all these cloud computing service providers, such as Google, Salesforce, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, Rackspace, Yahoo, and Soho, and a host of other cloud computing service providers. So cloud computing is internet, i.e. the cloud, based development and use of computer technology. Therefore, the term cloud computing is a marriage of the internet together with computer technology. All right? Now, that has happened a long time ago, including the use of mainframe computer over, say, the IBM SNA network, but we would not call it a cloud, and we're going to look at the differences between such network as well as other networks such as that for grid computing or utility computing, and why that is not part of the cloud computing picture. So we're going to look at what not is cloud computing, and the first example that we're going to look at is grid computing. What is grid computing? It's a very popular form of research in the 1990s that talked about basically a network of computers so that you can distribute the task of computing on different nodes or computers of the grid. So that in here you have the definition. Grid computing is a form of distributed computing whereby a super and virtual computer is composed of a cluster of networks and loosely coupled computers acting in concert to perform very large tasks. So in essence, grid computing is very similar to network computing, whereby you may have different people owning different node or computers on the network, and you cooperatively perform a computing task. It's also known as distributed computing. Now, I think what distinguishes cloud computing from grid computing is the very distinction that you have virtualization. And I think cloud computing make use of virtualization much more than grid computing would. In fact, it's only in the late 1990s and the 2000s that virtualization of every form of hardware become very popular in the cloud. Now, the second form of computing that we distinguish from cloud computing is called utility computing. And let me just read off from here. Utility computing, the packaging of computing resources such as computation and storage as a meter service similar to a traditional public utility, such as the utility of electricity. So the notion of utility computing actually had been around for a long time, since the notion of timeshare computing, particularly a multi operating system, for which people would use a mainframe computer according to the fraction of time that is allocated for the person. So utility computing is basically metering people's use of a CPU or storage device or other stuff, and you pay as you use them. So it's very similar to an electricity socket. You can plug your appliance into a socket that connect to the grid, and the grid provide you the electricity, and there's a meter that meter your usage of electricity, and therefore charge you at the end of the month the amount that you have used in terms of kilowatt hour. Whereby utility computing is a little bit more complicated, because the kind of things that you use on a network include not just computer, but also things like the amount of storage that you have, the amount of communication bandwidth that you have used over the month, and therefore you may have an itemized bill at the end of the month detailing how much you have used in each of these items. Now, again, utility computing is not really quite cloud computing, largely in the sense that the notion of virtualization was not there in the early days of the notion of timeshare computing. So let's look at Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, and how that has generated an entire industry called the power utility. Now, he not only invented a light bulb, which by itself doesn't work, but you need a power generation plant with heat engines that would turn DC or AC generator, which in turn is carried by the power utility grid to the home, and the amount of electricity that you use would be metered before you supply that electricity to your appliance. The question is, in what way is cloud computing similar to a utility? You could have personal computers, very much like the light bulb for the end user, and then you have the cloud. Why is the cloud? The cloud essentially would be servers that are virtualized, that you can use the server on demand, or you can use storage of data on demand. So what you have is that instead of power plant, what you have are data centers whereby servers storage network, switches would be there to help you to transfer the data over the internet and then onto the end user, literally the socket where you take information out and then onto the personal computer or the iPad that you're using. There's a question how you charge for the use of cloud computing, and there are many different models which we cannot go into detail today. Now, let me just describe to you what is the foundation of cloud computing. Now, the foundation of cloud computing basically is the technique of virtualization. What exactly is virtualization? Virtual means something that's not real. And virtualization is making a physical object into a virtualized object. So virtualization is a term that refers to the abstraction of computing, storage, and communication resources. You would use them on demand. It's not yours. It's not really there until you want it. Virtual means it's not physical, it's not real, but it is the process of virtualization, which is basically when you need something, the data as well as the computer program would be instantiated so that you can run your application over, say, a virtual computer from virtualized storage so that you can complete an application. So the example here is very similar to the notion that is described in the movie The Matrix. You could have Agent Smith, for which you can make instances of Agent Smith through the process of virtualization. And once you run the virtualization, you can generate hundreds of Agent Smith to do the fighting. So that we are going to describe much later about how you virtualize the different kind of things that you will find in the cloud.